My mom forgot to book flights for my family reunion. We thought you'd just drive 18 hours. My brother texted with a smirk. I replied, got it. Then I canceled the $14,000 luxury resort reservation I'd booked for everyone. 30 minutes before check-in, my phone flooded. Hey Reddit, my name is Rachel Morgan. I'm 35 years old, and I learned something about my family the week they expected me to drive 18 hours just to attend a reunion they had deliberately made difficult for me. The reunion was supposed to be special. I had planned everything. I booked a luxury resort, private rooms for everyone, a large dinner reservation, spa appointments, transportation. The total came to nearly $14,000. I paid for it because I wanted my family to have one beautiful weekend together. Then, 3 days before the reunion, I asked my mother for our flight details. She replied, "Oh, we forgot to book yours." I thought she was joking. Then my brother texted, "We figured you'd just drive the 18 hours. It's not that big of a deal." I stared at the message. I had spent $14,000 making sure everyone else was comfortable, and they couldn't even book me a plane ticket. I replied, "Got it." My brother sent a laughing emoji. He had no idea what I was about to do, because I opened the resort reservation on my phone and canceled every room. 30 minutes before check-in, my phone would be flooded with calls and messages. But to understand why I didn't feel guilty, you need to know how this family reunion started. I grew up with 2 brothers. My older brother, Mark, was always treated like the responsible one. My younger brother, Evan, was the funny one, and I was the organizer. If someone needed a birthday reservation, I handled it. If mom needed help booking a trip, I did it. If dad forgot an appointment, I reminded him. I became the person everyone relied on. Nobody seemed to notice how exhausting it was. They simply expected me to handle things. When my parents suggested a family reunion, I volunteered to organize it. Mom immediately said, "That would be wonderful, sweetheart." So I started planning. I found a beautiful resort several states away. It had a pool, private cabins, restaurants, hiking trails, and a large event space. Everyone loved the idea. Mark said, "Make sure you get the good rooms." Evan joked, "Put mine near the pool." Mom said, "Whatever you choose will be perfect." So I paid the deposit, then the remaining balance, then the dinner reservation, then the activities. By the time everything was booked, I'd spent almost $14,000. I wasn't worried. It was a gift to my family. I didn't expect anyone to repay me. I just wanted everyone together. A week before the trip, I started asking everyone for their flight information. Mark sent his immediately. Evan sent his. Dad sent his. Mom didn't. I texted her, "Mom, can you send me your flight details?" She replied, "I'll check." 2 days passed. I asked again. She said, "Don't worry, we've got it." I assumed she had booked something. Then, 3 days before the reunion, I received a message. "Mom, we didn't actually book your flight." I stared at the screen. I replied, What do you mean?" She answered, "We thought you could drive." I thought I had misunderstood. Drive from where? She sent the distance. 18 hours. I called her. "Mom, you knew I was organizing everything." "I know. You knew everyone else was flying." "I know. Then why would you expect me to drive?" She sighed. "Because you don't mind driving." I laughed. "I absolutely mind driving 18 hours. It's only one day." "No, Mom, it's 18 hours each way." She became quiet, then said, "Well, we thought you'd figure it out." That sentence hurt more than I expected. I had spent weeks figuring everything out for everyone else. Apparently, nobody had thought about me. That evening, Mark texted me. "Mom said you're driving." I replied, "Apparently." He sent, "LOL, it's only 18 hours. You'll survive." Then, "Don't be late. We have dinner at 7. I stared at the message. I typed, "Got it." He replied with a smirk emoji. That was when I made my decision. I opened the resort's booking account. Every room was under my name. The dinner reservation was under my name. The activity bookings were under my name. The entire $14,000 package had been paid with my credit card. I looked at the cancellation policy. The resort allowed cancellation up to 30 minutes before check-in. There would be a small administrative fee. Everything else would be refunded. I sat there for several minutes. I wasn't trying to punish them. I wasn't trying to ruin the reunion. I simply realized something. If I was apparently responsible enough to pay for everything, then I was responsible enough to decide whether I wanted to continue paying for people who couldn't even bother making sure I could get there. I canceled the reservation. All of it, every room, the dinner, the activities, everything. Then I booked myself a quiet hotel near my home. No family, no drama, just peace. The next morning, Mom called. "Rachel, what time are you leaving?" "I'm not." "What?" "I'm not coming." There was silence. "Why?" You forgot to book my flight. You can still drive. I don't want to. But the reunion is tomorrow. I know. She sounded irritated. You can't cancel now. I smiled. Actually, I can. She paused. What does that mean? I didn't answer. Instead, I hung up. I didn't tell her about the resort. Not yet. I wanted them to discover it themselves. The next day, I went about my morning normally. I had breakfast, finished some work, went shopping. At 4:30 p.m., I received my first message. It was from Mark. We're here. I didn't answer. A minute later, where are you? I ignored it. Then Evan. Rachel, Mom says you aren't coming. I didn't respond. Then Dad. Call your mother. I continued ignoring them. At 5 p.m., Mom called. I let it ring, then again, and again. Finally, a message appeared. Why aren't the rooms ready? I stared at the screen. I didn't answer. Another message. The front desk says there is no reservation. Then, Rachel, what did you do? I put my phone face down. I had expected anger. I had expected insults. What I didn't expect was how quickly they would realize the entire weekend had depended on the person they had treated as an afterthought. At 5:30 p.m., my phone started vibrating constantly. Mom, Dad, Mark, Evan, family group chat. Then another message appeared from Mark. The resort says you canceled everything. I finally replied, yes. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, are you serious? I answered, yes. Mom called. I didn't answer. She texted, you can't do this to your family. I looked at the message, then typed, you couldn't book me a flight. I couldn't book you a hotel. I pressed send. For almost a minute, there was silence. Then Mark wrote, this is incredibly selfish. I smiled sadly. Selfish. That word again. The same family that had expected me to spend $14,000 for everyone was calling me selfish because I refused to spend another night being taken for granted. Then Dad sent, you have ruined this entire reunion. I looked at the clock. The resort check-in time was approaching, and that's when my phone started ringing again. This time, it wasn't my mother. It was the resort manager. I answered, hello? Her voice was careful. Ms. Morgan, I'm calling regarding your cancellation. Yes, there seems to be a problem. My stomach tightened. What kind of problem? She paused. Your family is here. I know. They're insisting the reservation should still be honored. I closed my eyes. Of course they were. Then she said something that made me sit up. There's another issue. What? Your father says he has documentation proving that he is authorized to make changes to the reservation. I froze. What documentation? I can't discuss the details over the phone. She paused, but he is showing us something with your name on it. My heart started pounding. I hadn't authorized anyone. Nobody had access to my account. Nobody had permission to use my name. I stood up. Can you tell me one thing? Yes? Is my father still there? Yes? And my brother? Yes? I looked at my phone. The family group chat was exploding. Then another message appeared from Dad. Rachel, you're going to regret doing this. I stared at those words. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about a canceled resort anymore. My father was claiming he had authorization to control something that belonged to me, and I had a terrible feeling that whatever document he was holding wasn't supposed to exist. Sometimes a family member doesn't just cross a boundary. They create a story where they were never supposed to have one. And as I stared at the message from my father, I realized the reunion wasn't the only thing they had planned. Without telling me, I stared at my father's message. You're going to regret doing this. I almost laughed. Then the resort manager called again. Ms. Morgan, your father is claiming he was authorized to manage the reservation. That's impossible. That's what we thought. What document is he showing you? She hesitated. A printed authorization form. My stomach tightened. I never signed anything. That's what I told him. I immediately opened my account. My reservation was still canceled. My credit card was still attached to it, and there was no authorized guest listed. I sent the resort manager a copy of my identification and the original booking confirmation. She reviewed everything, then said, you're correct. Your father has no authority over this reservation. I thanked her. A few minutes later, she called back. The family has left. I exhaled. Then she added, your father was very upset. I smiled. For once, that's not my problem. My phone exploded again. Mom, how could you embarrass us like this? Dad, you deliberately ruined Mother's reunion. Mark, everyone drove here. You owe us. Evan, you need to fix this. I looked at those messages. Not one person asked why I had been expected to drive 18 hours. Not one person apologized for forgetting my flight. They were angry because their free luxury vacation had disappeared. I finally replied to the group. I paid $14,000 for this trip because I wanted everyone to enjoy themselves. I asked you to book one flight for me. You told me to drive 18 hours. I decided I wasn't interested in paying for a vacation where I wasn't even treated like a guest. Then I left the group. This time, I didn't feel guilty. The next morning, Mom came to my house. I opened the door. She looked exhausted. You really canceled everything? Yes? Why would you do that? Because you excluded me from the planning. We forgot. You remembered everyone else. She looked down, then quietly said, "You're right. I wasn't expecting that." She continued, "I thought you'd just handle it." I nodded. That's exactly the problem. She looked at me. We've always relied on you. Reliance isn't the same as respect. She started crying. I didn't realize how unfair we'd become. I softened slightly. I don't hate you, Mom. I know. But I can't keep being the person everyone remembers when they need something. She nodded. I understand. Dad didn't apologize immediately. Instead, he called later that evening. I want to explain the authorization. I sighed. Go ahead. The resort required someone to confirm the booking if there were changes. And I thought because I was your father. I interrupted. That doesn't give you authority over my reservation. I know that now. What exactly did you show them? He hesitated. A copy of the original booking. I closed my eyes. So you didn't have authorization? No. Then why did you tell them you did? I panicked. I almost laughed. You panicked because the free vacation disappeared. He didn't answer. Finally, he said, yes. It was the first honest thing he'd said. A few weeks later, Mom organized another family dinner. This time, she didn't ask me to pay. She didn't ask me to make reservations. She simply sent me an invitation. I almost declined. Then I remembered something. Boundaries didn't mean I had to cut everyone out. They meant I could choose how much I gave. So I went. When I arrived, Mom hugged me. Dad shook my hand. Mark looked embarrassed. Evan apologized. Mark finally said, I was wrong about the driving thing. I smiled. You were. He laughed. Fair enough. Then he added, I shouldn't have sent that smirking text. No, I thought you were just being difficult. I know. He nodded. I understand now. The most important conversation happened with Mom. She looked at me across the table. You know what I realized? What? We didn't forget your flight. I stared at her. What? She took a breath. We talked about it. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? Your brothers said you wouldn't mind driving. I looked at Mark. He immediately looked down. Mom continued. I agreed. So you didn't forget. No, you deliberately decided I could drive 18 hours. She nodded. I was wrong. That hurt more than I expected, because I had spent days believing I simply wasn't important enough to remember. The truth was worse. They remembered. They just didn't consider my comfort important enough. I took a breath. Thank you for telling me. Mom reached across the table. I'm sorry. This time, I believed her. Epilogue. That experience changed the way I deal with my family. I still love them, but I no longer automatically volunteer to organize everything. I don't automatically pay. I don't automatically solve their problems. And surprisingly, our relationships improved, because when I stopped doing everything, everyone else started taking responsibility. The next family reunion happened a year later. Mom booked the resort. Dad arranged transportation. My brothers booked their own flights, and I paid for exactly one thing. My own room. Nobody complained. Nobody expected anything else. And when Mom called me afterward, she said, thank you for coming. Not, thank you for paying. Not, thank you for organizing. Just, thank you for coming. That meant more than she probably realized. Looking back, I don't regret canceling that $14,000 reservation. I didn't cancel it because I wanted revenge. I canceled it because I finally understood that generosity stops being generosity when people begin treating it as an obligation. I had spent years believing that being the reliable daughter meant always saying yes. But family shouldn't love you for what you provide. They should value you for who you are. And sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do isn't make a dramatic speech. It isn't punish anyone. It isn't cut everyone off. Sometimes it's simply saying, if I'm not important enough to be considered, I'm not obligated to keep providing. That weekend, my family lost a luxury vacation, but I gained something much more valuable: the ability to stop being taken for granted.